Hello students, welcome to the English class again. Today I am going to continue with the same chapter, Ivan tries an O level, written by Colin Dexter. This chapter is a bit lengthy one, so we'll do in 7 slots. 3 slots we have already done. Now this is the fourth slot and I am going to continue with the chapter from page number 77, the very last paragraph. So before beginning, I would like to recollect or summarize what we had read up till third slot. So we had read that in this chapter, in early March, the Secretary of the Examination Board received a telephonic request from the governor of the Oxford prison to create an examination center in jail for one candidate named Evans. And you all know that Evans, who is Evans? Evans is a criminal who is also called as Einstein because thrice he had been imprisoned, but he managed to escape from the prison all the time. So this was the fourth time, so he was sent to. He is now locked in the Oxford prison, which is considered to be the safest one from where no prisoner could escape, and they are under the vigilance of the governor and other officials. So Evans, he is very smart. He just wanted to add to his academic qualification. He wanted to take the German O level exams. So the secretary of the examination board received a telephonic request from the governor of the Oxford prison to create an examination in the jail only for Evans, and then Evans, he started taking night classes in O level German last September, which was arranged by the governor governor only, and he was the only one in the class. Then the secretary made other routine inquiries and promised to send all the forms and stuff. Then the cell of Evans was turned into the examination room. A parson from St. Mary Mag's was to work as invigilator. The governor did not tell the secretary that Evans the Break had already escaped from prison 3 times. He would have done so from Oxford prison if there had not been unrest in the maximum security establishments up north. Then the governor of Oxford prison took personal interest to see that Evans got no chance to escape. And one day prior to the examination, that is on Monday 7th June, Evans' German teacher shook him by the hand at 8:30 p.m. and wished him good luck. They met in heavily guarded recreational block just across from D Wing. Then at 8:30 the following morning, that is Tuesday 8th June, Evans had two visitors, Mr. Jackson, the senior prison officer on D Wing, and Mr. Stephens, a burly, surly looking man, only recently recruited to the profession. Then Mr. Jackson mockingly addressed Evans as Einstein, and Evans' face was unshaven, and he requested Mr. Jackson to let him shave himself. Then Jackson instructed Stephens to make sure that he took his razor out of the cell. Mr. Jackson told Evans that he had got half an hour to smarten himself, and he asked Evans to take off that filthy looking hat, for what Evans replied that it had brought him luck in life and requested to be allowed to keep it on during the examination. Then at 8:45 the same morning, the Reverend Stuart McLeary left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and stepped out briskly towards Carfax. The temperature was considerably below normal, and a long black overcoat and a shallow crowned clerical hat provided welcome protection from the steady drizzle which spattered the thick lenses of his spectacles, and in his right hand he was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties. Then the 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. Two small square tables were set opposite each other in the prison cell. Two hard chairs were placed in front of the tables. Jackson told Evans that the governor himself was going to listen in. Jackson would be watching him like a hawk. And then he asked Evans to keep his nose clean. Evans nodded on this, and he had his number 2 handkerchief lying ready on the bunk just before leaving this cell. Jackson wished Evans good luck. Then, in the little lodge just inside the prison's main gate, the Reverend S. McCleary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book. From there, he walked side by side with a silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D Wing. Here, he was greeted by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them. The same was done to the heavy inner door, and McCleary was now to be looked after by Stephens. Jackson murmured if he had got the razor, and Stephens nodded. Then McCleary followed Stephens to the cell where Evans was kept. Stephens opened the peephole and found Evans completely engrossed in a textbook of elementary German grammar. That means he was revising for the exam. And Stephens took the key from its ring and the cell locked open. Then it was 9:10 a.m. The governor instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution. The governor thought that Evans might try to take advantage of McCleary. So Evans had been got rid of any potential weapon. But what about innocent McCleary? He might bring a jackknife. Then Evans might hold him a hostage with it. Then governor phoned Jackson to lightly frisked McCleary's clothes. Then he searched the contents of the suitcase. He was puzzled to find a semi-inflated rubber ring in the suitcase of McCleary. Then McCleary explained that he suffered from hemorrhoids. When he sat down for a long time, then he found a paper knife at the bottom of the case, and very politely he took it away. So now we'll read further what happens. The examination started a bit late. So, and the governor heard the voices of the invigilator and the examinee, and it was now 9:20. So now we'll read further what happened. So now further it says, it was 9:18 a.m. before the governor heard their voices again, and it was clear that the examination was going to be more than a little late in getting underway. Then the conversation began between McCleary and Evans. McCleary said, "You've got a watch?" Evans, "Yes, sir." And McCleary says, "I'll be telling Eve when to start, and again when you've 5 minutes left. A right." Silence. Then McCleary says, "There's plenty more. Oh, this writing paper should you need it." Then again silence was there. Then McCleary, "Now write the name of the paper 021-1 in the top left hand corner." Then again silence was there. McCleary, "In the top right hand corner write your index number 313, and in the box just below that write your center number 271. A right." Then again silence was there. 9:20 a.m. it was. Then McCleary, "I am now going to," then Evans says, "is not going to say your is E." Then McCleary, "I don't know about that. I." Then Stephens, "Mr. Jackson's given me strict instructions too." Then Evans, "How am I supposed to concentrate on my exam with someone breathing down my neck? Christ, sorry sir, I didn't mean." Then Evans says, "How am..." Then the governor reached for the phone, and Jackson, "Ah, good. Get Stephen out of the cell, will you? I think we are perhaps overdoing things." "As you wish, sir." So, in these lines, now it was 9:18 a.m. when governor heard their voices again. It was understood that the exam will start a little late. Then McCleary queried, he asked a question Evans about having a watch, that whether Evans was having a watch. So McCleary, he wanted to find out, so he asked Evans whether he was having a watch, and he answered yes. He said that he will tell him when to start, and he will again tell him when only 5 minutes will be left. Then Evans said nothing. McCleary gave him instructions about where to write the index number, center number, etc. Then he quietly followed it. When McCleary was about to say start, Evans again interrupted him and looked at Stephens. Stephens answered that he has been ordered by Jackson to stay there for the exam, and Evans complained of not being able to concentrate if someone will be constantly watching him like this. He also felt sorry for this. Then Governor called Jackson and ordered him to get Stephens out of the cell, as he thought that they were overdoing it a bit too much. Then further, the next paragraph says, the governor heard the exchanges in the cell, heard the door changed once more, and heard McCleary announce that the examination had begun at last. Then it was 9:25 a.m. and there was a great calm. Calm means quietness. So there was complete silence. Nobody was speaking as Evans was busy doing his exam. At 9:40 a.m., the examinations board rang through and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages asked to speak to governor. The examination had already started, no doubt. A quarter of an hour ago, yes. Well, there was a correction slip which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. Very brief. Could the governor please? Yes, of course. I'll put you straight through to Jackson. Mr. Jackson in D Wing. Hold the line a minute. So now the governor, in these lines, the governor heard what was talked on the phone between Stephens and Jackson. He heard the door being shut and also heard McCleary announcing the beginning of the exam. And it was 9:25 a.m. at that time, and there was great peace. There was calm, complete silence was there. At 9:40 a.m., the Assistant Secretary of Modern Languages called up from the examination board to speak to the governor. And the examination had already started about a quarter of an hour ago. And he told him that some fool had not placed the correction slip in the examination package. And he then tried to seek help from the governor. The receiver assures him of help by directly connecting the call to Mr. Jackson in D Wing. Then further, it says, was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? Was the phone call a fake? Some signal, some secret message? But he could check on that immediately. He dialed the number of the examinations board but heard only a staccato bleeps of a line engaged. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Yes, not very intelligent that. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispered communication in the cell, and then McCleary's broad Scots voice. Will you please stop writing a wee while, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully. Candidates offering German 021-1 should note the following corrections. On page 3, line 15, the fourth word should read Goldenen, not Goldin, and the whole phrase will therefore read Zum Goldenen Lohen, not Zum Goldin Lohen. I will repeat that. So in these lines, the staccato means a short musical note, and then Scots means another term for Scottish it is. So in these lines, they said that could this be a reason behind his fear? The governor thought. A line of thoughts came to his mind, but the call being a fake, he called this call a fake, used to share some signal for a secret message. He then cross-checked it by dialing the number of the examination board, and he heard the sound of continuous beep, which one hears if the phone is engaged. And after a gap of 2 minutes, he heard some whisper. Then after a while, he heard McCleary giving instructions to the Evans in his heavy Scottish voice. He asked him to stop writing for a while and also instructed him to open page 3. Here he gave him some instructions as to make corrections of fourth word in 15th line. Then further, the next paragraph says, the governor listened and smiled. He had taken German in the sixth form himself, and he remembered all about the agreements of adjectives. And so did McLeary, by the sound of things, for the minister's pronunciation was most impressive. But what about Evans? He probably didn't know what an adjective was. Then, further, the phone rang. Again, the magistrates court, they needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers, remand case, and within 2 minutes, the governor was wondering whether that could be a hoax, and he told himself not to be so silly. His imagination was beginning to run riot. So, in this line, the word magistrate is a civil officer who administers law, hoax is a prank. So, in these lines, the governor instead he listened and smiled because he had taken German as a language when he was in 6th class, and he remembered about the adjectives, and so did McLeary. The minister's pronunciation of the words sounded very impressive to the governor, but he thought there were less chances of Evans being aware of the adjectives. Meanwhile, he received a call from the magistrates, that is, a civil officer who administers law. From the magistrates' court, he received a call, and there was a need of a prison van and some officers, as there was a remand case within the next 2 minutes. The governor thought it to be a fake call, but then he thought that he was thinking too much and his imagination was getting out of control. Then further, the next paragraph says, Evans, for the quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so. And after that, every 2 minutes, at 10:45 a.m., everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. It took 4 or 5 seconds, no more. What was the point? It was always more or less the same. Evans, his pen between his lips, sat staring right in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. And opposite him, McLeary, seated slightly askew is tilted from the table now, his face in semi profile, his hair amateurishly, that is, beginner, clipped pretty closely to the scalp, his eyes behind the pebble lenses peering short sightedly at the church Times, his right index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and the fingers of the left hand, the nails meticulously manicured. Meticulously means very carefully, slowly stroking the short black beard. So, in these lines, for the first 15 minutes, Stephens had looked into the cell through the peephole after a gap of every 1 minute, and then at 10:45 a.m., everything seemed normal. When he looked through the hole, there was no difference and it remained the same as always. Evans was always chewing his pen and looking at the front. McLeary, always seated on his chair, a bit tilted on one side with his face partly turned. Stephens had noticed him earlier that his hair was cut very short near the scalp. He was reading the Church Times through the spectacles, and his first finger was under his collar. The fingers of the left hand were nicely manicured, and he was softly touching his black. Then further it says, at 10:50 a.m. the receiver crackled to life, and the governor realized he had almost forgotten Evans for a few. Then further the conversation began. Evans says, "Please, sir." A whisper is there. Then Evans, "Please, sir." Then again he says, louder, Evans, "Would you mind if I put a blanket round me shoulders, sir? It's a bit parky in here." Parky means very cold, isn't it? Then again silence. Evans says, "Would you mind if I put..." Evans, "There's no one. There's one on me bunk here, sir." Then McLeary, "Be quick about it." Then again silence. Then further it says, now here in these lines the word crackle means crack or sizzle. Parky is cold. So in these lines at 10:50 a.m. the phone rang, and after a while the governor found that he had almost forgotten about Evans. He then heard Evans seeking permission from the supervisor to wrap a blanket around his shoulders as he was feeling cold there, and McCleary allowed him to do so. Then further the next paragraph says, at 10:51 a.m. Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped round Ivan's shoulders, and he frowned slightly and looked at the examinee more closely. But Ivan's, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before, blankly beneath a blanket. Should Stephens report the slight irregularity? Anything at all fishy, hadn't Jackson said? He looked through the peephole once again, and even as he did so, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. Was he planning a sudden Batman leap to suffocate McCleary in the blanket? Don't be daft. There was never any sun on this side of the prison, no heating either during the summer months, and it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. Stephens decided to revert to his earlier every minute observation. Then at 11:20 a.m. the receiver once more crackled across the silence of the governor's office, and McCleary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained and the examination was almost over now. But something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once more. So in these lines, the word frown means to make a face, fishy means doubtful thing, suffocate means breathless, revert means return to, and nod means chew. So in all these lines, at 10:51 a.m. Stephens opened the peephole and was very much surprised to see Ivan sitting with a blanket on his shoulders. And it seemed strange to him, and he even thought of reporting Jackson for this new change he had noticed. He again looked at him and noticed that Evans pulled the dirty blanket close to himself. Now Stephens was getting doubtful about Evans. He even thought that he could harm McCleary by suffocating him with his blanket. But then he told himself that he should not behave so foolish, as there is no sun on this side of the prison, and not even in summers. It is normal that the cell gets chilly. So he decided to return back to his every minute check through the peephole. Then at 11:20 a.m. once again the governor's phone rang. Meanwhile, McCleary told Evans that only 5 minutes were left for the exam to be completed, and governor was still doubtful about something, but he went to receive the call. Then further the next paragraph says, at 11:22 a.m. Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him. Hurry, man! Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively and listened to the rapidly spoken orders. Stephens himself was to accompany McCleary to the main prison gates. Understood. Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McCleary had left the cell. Understood. Understood. So now in these then at 11:25 a.m. the governor heard the final exchanges. So in these lines the word apprehensively means worried or anxious, absolutely means completely. So at 11:22 a.m. Jackson shouted to Stephens as the governor wanted to talk to him, and he ran up and listened carefully to each and everything ordered to him. It was his duty to accompany McCleary to the main gate of the prison, and Stephens had to be fully assured about Ivan's cell being properly locked when McCleary leaves it. At 11:25 a.m., the governor heard the final talks between Evans and McCleary. Then, now, further, McCleary says, put your sheets in order and see they are correctly numbered. Then again silence. Scraping of chairs and tables. Evans, thank you very much, sir. McCleary, right was it? Evans, not too bad. McCleary, good, Mr. Stephens. Very loudly he said that. The governor heard the door clank for the time for the last time and the examination was over. So now, so in this conversation between McCleary and Evans, we can see that McCleary, he asked Evans to stop writing as the time of the exam was over. He also told him to arrange his sheets in order, and then the sound of the movement of the chairs was heard. Evans said thank you to McCleary. He queried as to how his exam was, and Evans replied that it was not too bad. He then called Mr. Stephens. The governor heard the final shutting down of the door. The exam was over. So now further, the next line says, how did he get on? Do you think? Asked Stephens. He walked beside McCleary to the main gate. Och, I cannot think he's distinguished himself. I am afraid. His Scots accent seemed broader than ever, and his long black overcoat, reaching almost to his knees, fostered the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. So now in these lines, the word foster means support, distinguish means differentiate, and illusion means mirage or imagination. So in these lines now, after the exam was over, then McCleary, he said, Stephens asked McCleary that how did exam of Evans go, whether it go well or not. So on this, McCleary said that he didn't think so, and his Scottish accent seemed a bit different from the earlier one. So now this created a doubt. This was very doubtful because now the voice was accent and the voice was completely changed from then moreover the overcoat that McCleary was wearing was now reaching close to his knees, leading to the imagination that he had suddenly turned slim. So this created a doubt in the mind of Stephens, but we'll see that whether he just moved or whether he thinks smartly or not. Then the next paragraph says, Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him and not Jackson to see McCleary off the premises, and all in all the morning had gone pretty well. But something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen for a belated cup of coffee. He wanted to take just one last look at Evans, and it was like a program he had seen on TV about a woman who could never really convince herself that she had locked the front door when she had gone to bed. Often she had got up 12, 15, sometimes 20 times to check the bolts. So again, this is a humorous note. So in these lines, the word belated means late or overdue, and convince means assure. So in these lines, now Stephens was happy, very happy, as he thought that the governor had chosen him for accompanying McCleary to the gate or to see him off to take McCleary to the gate of the premises, and not Jackson was asked to do so. So everything was done fine this day, and he thought that everything was going on fine, everything was going on well, and he stopped him from going to the canteen for an overdue cup of coffee. So as Stephens had not taken coffee since morning, so he wanted to take a cup of coffee. He wanted to go to the canteen. So, but before that, he wanted to see Evans for one last time, and it seemed to him like a TV program in which the lady is never sure of locking the door before going to bed, and she would get up 12, 15 or even 20 times to check the bolts. That means now he was Stephens, he was very much cautious now, and here the worry of Stephens is compared to the lady who just checks the bolts of the door 15 to 20 times before going to bed, just to assure herself whether she had locked the door before going off to sleep, in order to avoid any mishappening.